Hello, good morning. How's everybody today? Welcome to another meetup with ADOS KC. Just waiting for everyone to file in this morning. If you'll notice, we're at a different setting today. We're at Equal Minded Cafe. It's in Kansas City. It's 43rd and Troost. And I thought it would for next week we're going to start our book club discussion, and it's a lot to unpack. So I figured it would be easier for us to have like a round table discussion or um, so we'll see how this works out. So far so good. I'm definitely liking the vibe here. I don't know if you can hear the music since I have my earbuds in, but it is an ADOS owned cafe in the city, which we definitely want to support those. So, like I said, so far so good. Uh, Today we will be talking about reparations, what we know about reparations, as far as what it's, what is it, and why ADOS fights for it, and all those good things. I have a few questions in my notebook here that we'll kind of go through as the discussion opens up. All right, and we're gonna try to do it in the roundtable way. So I have my daughter's school iPad here, and if you can see the timer, so that each person will get 5 minutes to make their comments. That way, it'll hopefully be a lot smoother in everyone being able to get in their discussion and everyone being able to share their viewpoints and basically having a much smoother transition from person to person. Anyway, so we have a couple of people who are in the chat today. So if you can hear me, please let me know. Feel free to unmute yourself. Let me know if you can hear me. I guess I should have asked that at first, but it's all good. Can you hear me? Thumbs up if you can. I'll turn it up louder.
Kiara, I can hear you. I'm on the phone. This is Brian.
Okay, great. I don't know if I should turn up louder, then let everyone else who's watching adjust. I'll do that. All right. So if possible, with everyone who's in the chat so far, change their settings so that we can all see your faces. Just that way it's easier to see the person who's talking and a lot better conversation that way. All right, so we can get started. Like I said, today we're talking about reparations, and I have a list of questions here that we'll go through. And we'll go through it one person at a time. The first question I have is, what is reparations? So whoever wants to start, feel free. And I'll set the timer. So first question is, what is reparations? Does anyone want to go?
I guess I'll go.
Yeah, I was like, I have a lot to say about it, so I'm trying not to monopolize. But go ahead, Deb.
I it is the redress, repair, and I don't know why I can't think this morning, but Dr. Doherty talks about it in the book, reconciliation of the damage that's been done historically for us. I didn't want to go first because I don't have everything together like I need to, but reparation it is to repair us and make us whole. So it's a cash payment, it's an allotment of land, it's an inheritance for us to like I watched one of the videos maybe a month ago, and it's seed money. It's not to be, like squandered. So I'm sorry I wasn't better prepared. I kind of run down rabbit holes on Instagram, but it's seed money for generational wealth owed to us by the United States because of our ancestors being enslaved. So that's what I think reparations is.
If you can see the timer, it's back. It might be backwards, but yeah.
Okay,
Um,
you okay?
but Deb, I mean, right now we're just talking about what we do know. So with that,
Okay.
it also, I mean, there's a lot we don't know. Like none of us here are experts at anything. So it's okay. Like we don't necessarily have to have the perfect answer per se. Like today we're just talking about what we do know. So it's okay if our
But
answer isn't like completely polished. You know what I mean?
what I
Like,
like about you, what I like about the group is you guys are data driven. That's what I like about it. It's data driven, but the information is so overwhelming and traumatic. It's really hard. It takes me a while to process it.
okay. Um, so does anyone else want to add anything to that? Like, what is reparations?
I'll go. I'm Alvonia, and reparative justice. As Deb was saying, it acknowledges, redresses, and closes the issue not only of slavery, but Jim Crow, segregation, as well as the continued harms of systemic racism. And again, she spoke about the extraction of wealth that was taken, and also the ability to obtain wealth after 1865. Um, and for me, it's like it's reparative justice. And again, it's not money to be squandered. It's money to start businesses, money for investments, to purchase land. And that's what reparation means to me, reparative justice.
Thank you for sharing, Avonia.
Thank you.
I'll set the timer. All right. I'll go next. So, um, when I first started hearing about reparations, I I defined it as uh, the monetary redress for the stolen wages of slavery. But the more I learned about it, I kind of include like for a time, it seemed like a lot of people in the ADOS movement kind of separated reparations and the Black agenda of a redress for the effects of structural racism. But I kind of include them, or I've combined them together. So now when I think of what reparations is, I think of it as both the monetary redress to close the racial wealth gap, the black-white wealth gap specifically, and also to elevate Black Americans to a protected class. So it's both. So when I say reparations, I define it as both monetary reparations and of the Black agenda of elevating Black Americans so that we no longer have to suffer the effects of structural racism, not just in the not just in money, but in the psychological aspect of it as well. All right, Brian, did you want to jump in?
Hi. Yeah. Sorry, I'm on speakerphone. So hopefully you can hear me all right.
Yeah,
I
you.
don't. Okay, great. I don't want to speak too much. I really like what you just said, Kiara, because the way I have thought about it, I know next to nothing about the specifics of reparations ideas, and I confess I'm not very far along in from here to equality. But coming, from a legal background, I definitely think of it as, in the context of the civil law, outside the criminal law, but the civil law trying to, the concept of reparations, and I think Alvonia used the word redress. The attempt in the civil law is to make the harmed party, the injured party, whole again. So I think of it from that context, specifically economically. And I think, Kiara, you mentioned, stolen wages from 200 years of slavery before 1865. But your comment was also really important because there's obviously no way to, how do you redress something like slavery, right? Like, how much money could there be? How much psychological injury? How do you redress psychological injury that spans hundreds of years of generations? So it's such an interesting topic because it's both very concrete, very pragmatic, and also very, very personal, very psychological, very generational, very spiritual, and it's woven through the entire history of our country. So I don't know. That's how I think of it now, and I'm so appreciative of being in this conversation because I definitely think that these kinds of conversations for all of us help us to focus on specific ideas, both concrete and more abstract, within the larger discussion. So those are my thoughts.
All right, that was excellent. Sorry, I was muted, but I was going to say that was excellent. So the next question I have is what will an ADOS reparations program consist of? Like, we've been pushing for the Democratic Party to adopt a reparations like agenda. What do we know that or what do we know though what those demands are? That's a bad sentence. What do we know those demands are with reparations? What have we been asking for? What would be included or what should be included in a reparations agenda?
In regards to the Democratic Party, Kiara, I can't hear you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Black Americans have predominantly voted Democratic, so that's why we're pushing a candidate, presidential candidate Joe Biden, to adopt a Black agenda. So yeah, with the Democratic Party, what should that agenda or what should a reparations agenda look like?
Well, of course, Ed is to HR 40. And also, I think it should be that crime bill that Biden is responsible for should be revisited and evaluated. And also the entire criminal justice system should be also included in that to be more mental health focused and more to the core problem of incarceration. So I think we are on the right things. I mean, ADOS is holding people responsible for the HR 40 bill. I wasn't aware of it until I started following ADOS. So I know we're looking for a Black agenda, specific policies for descendants of slaves. But um, my concern is, like, I found an old article as recently as February 2019. It was written by Ford. So I mean, not a reliable source. Interesting because it had a transcript of candidate Harris speaking on reparations, but she was speaking on it from the dynamic, I guess, from the paradigm of mental health. So I like the fact that we have specific, agendas for them. And I just believe the agenda is specific policies for us guaranteed on day one. I'm sorry, I don't mean to go down the rabbit hole, but it's hard to kind of put it all together once I'm on video. Good morning.
Yeah, I was gonna say to what Deb just said. Um, uh, Vice presidential nominee Kamala Harris does speak a lot to the trauma of slavery as far as Black Americans are concerned, but she speaks less. Good morning. She speaks less on the data points that ADOS has, the financial responsibility that the U.S. government has to provide reparations. She mainly talks about it like we need to implement therapy for Black people. I'm like, yes, and so today we're talking about what we know about reparations, and the question that's on the table right now is, what will an ADOS reparations agenda consist of?
Well, I'll interject. Well, for me with the ADOS, I guess, as you pointed out in the beginning, a lot of times a Black agenda and reparations, when I put it together, there reparations is inside of the Black agenda, is part of it, but I don't think lay people really understand. So that could be a reasoning why people say Black agenda and reparations. But of course, it's going to address affirmative action. It's going to address the laws, and again, the Constitution in itself, needs to be addressed, because there is legislation written directly for us. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. Has the U.S. government really enforced those laws to their benefit? And of course, besides laws, it's also going to have to include financial payment, and of course, therapy, land. But as far as the Black agenda, this is not just one time, one legislation, one bill of legislation can erase 400 years of racial oppression. And I think that's the myth we need to dispel. It's going to take a lot of laws to just reverse. And again, Deb said something, but if you think about what Obama said on his presidency when he spoke of reparations, what did he say? He said something to the effect we don't need reparations. He said we just need to enforce the discrimination laws. Do you know how hard it is to get a case doing through the EEOC in Midwestern District? It's very hard, where the burden of proof is on the accuser opposed to it's set up to defend the person that's being accused. So there again is the manipulation.
All right, thanks for sharing, Alania.
Thank you.
Again, thank you. All right, so question is, what will an ADOS reparations agenda consist of? What are our demands for reparations? What should they be? What are they? All right, and Chris or Brian can jump in.
Sorry, I was looking at the 10-point program by the Black Panthers because I am a huge fan of theirs and I like what they were striving for. And I was about to share that with the group. But you know, some of the things that we have talked about are within the plan. I mean, especially we've been kind of talking about number 10. It seems like, where it says we want land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, and peace. I mean, that sounds like, that almost sounds like a natural course of things that you should be able to supply, because everyone should get that. Everyone should get those things. But in addition to that, there's some other ones on here that says, like, you know, we want full employment for our people. We want to end the robbery by the capitalists of our Black community. I mean, things like that, I think also should be part of the agenda, just to the extent that we have to be seen as more than just entertainers and methods to make money for somebody else. And we have to make sure that, you know, we'd like to, you know, be in a position where we can actually control our own destiny when it comes to things like that. So that way we don't have to worry about, you can leave it open. We don't have to worry about, you know, you know, are we being manipulated?
Morning, everybody.
Someone else's agenda. What's good? Are we being manipulated to somebody else's agenda? Are we being manipulated to somebody else's will? Are we being used in some sort of way? And, you know, we just want, I mean, fairness and equality is not something, or shouldn't be something that you have to legislate, but apparently you do. And so we need that legislation in place. Like we were talking about on the podcast last night when we got to the last question of the evening, we were asking, what is your price? You'll see those people trying to be funny, that sort of put out those memes a lot that'll have some sweet looking old lady, white, Black, whatever, doesn't matter. And they'll say like, would you slap this lady for $42 million, for $200 million or something like that? And you know, everyone, you know, everybody wants to be a jokester. So everyone's like, yeah, I would. It's not that hard. It's not that bad or whatever. And I don't know. I just feel like we need to figure out what our price is and stick to it. Because a lot of us are, you know, selling ourselves short, unfortunately. I think about the Breonna Taylor family, and I'm not saying that they were bad for taking the money or what have you, but I just know in that situation, and maybe even if I were in that position to have or receive something like that, I'd say, okay, well, maybe maybe I'm not as high and mighty as I think, because man, I don't know if I'll ever get the opportunity to have 12 million standing me in the face again. But coming from the position that I know I'm in right now, I don't think I would. I know that's not the subject right now, but I just overall I'm talking about, you know, where we are in terms of what we're seeking, and what sort of actual outcomes we're looking for, because we want real legislation. We want real people in place who are going to enforce the laws that are in place. I mean, we shouldn't have to. Well, let me not even get to that point. But the fact that we have to have, you know, anti-discrimination laws, anti-racism laws, and things like that, uh, that's great and that's a beautiful thing, even though there's no legislation that's recently been put in place to those efforts. But still, there are some that are on the books. The fact is, or the problem is the fact that we don't have anybody who's actually enforcing those laws. So that's the problem. That's the issue that we have right now. That's what we really need right now. We can have Black Lives Matter posters and murals all over Kansas City, and we can, then we'll have somebody come and do a burnout, and then we'll talk about it on somebody's news show, and that'll be the conversation. But nobody will talk about, hey, there are actual laws that still haven't been put in place, and there are still people being killed by the police, and there are still police that are killing with impunity. Those conversations still aren't being had. Like, we aren't even broaching those conversations in a lot of instances. So we need to get to a point of actual reality and actual boots on the ground movement, so we can say, listen, this is what we're aiming for. Yeah, Aunt Jemima was nice. Thank you for taking her off the box. Yeah, Kansas City Chiefs is cool. You can change the name from the Chiefs to whatever you want to change it to. But the fact is, we need actual legislation and actual people in place who are going to do the things that we need done to to get us to the point that we need to be. And that's in my opinion, that's what we should be aiming for and striving for as ADOS. So like I was talking too long.
Oh no, you're good. I have a timer, but I lost track of time too. It's all good.
Okay. Right on.
But I think kind of piggyback on off of what you said. As far as us naming our price, I've heard of several different figures as far as what as far as what the monetary side of reparations will be. I've heard some say 250,000 per person. I've heard that figure going up as far as 500,000 per person. I've heard 800,000 per household. I've read many articles, ADOS articles, but I know in the final chapters of From Here to Equality, William Darity and Kirsten Mullen actually do outline their what they think of reparations as it has been. I have not gotten to the last chapter of the book yet. There's a lot to unpack, so I'm really taking my time with it. I'll probably be reading it all the way up until next Friday night, because last minute. But so like I said, I've heard multiple figures. Personally, I think it should. At first, I was saying yeah, $250,000 per person. Like that's a lot for a Black person. But then I started thinking about, I'm like, yeah, but that's not gonna close the wealth gap, because so many Black Americans, they have who went to college, they're still paying off their student loans, so that money is going to be eaten up just like that. So we need more than 250,000 per person. So I was like, okay, well, I think the figures, I can never remember what the population of ADOS Black Americans are. I think it's 35 million. I think it's 35 million. Um, and with 35 million Black Americans, a figure of 500,000 per person would be 15 trillion, I believe. So I definitely think, we certainly don't want to lowball ourselves. So yeah, anything between 15 trillion and 20 trillion sounds about right. That would be 500,000 to 750,000 per person. Like, I think, yep, that sounds about right. That would be enough money for us to pay off any standing debts that we have and have money left over to grow. So there's that. with legislation, I definitely think we need to what we need to increase what's happening now, where we're demanding that people are held accountable to um, being anti ADOS, um, the the anti ADOS hate speech that is so prevalent in the media and just in general in the workplace. People need to be held accountable to that. You can't just say whatever you want to say about ADOS. You certainly wouldn't be able to say that about the Jewish community. I mean, look what's happening to Nick Cannon right now. Like, my goodness, he's really been put out there so bad after what he said, which was, I mean, rooted in truth. He wasn't entirely well versed in what he was saying, but what he was saying about Sephardic Jews was rooted in truth, and he's basically being persecuted for that. A Jew, that would never happen to a Jewish person. So that shouldn't happen to ADOS either. So we definitely need policies in place that um, protect American descendants of slavery, Black American descendants of slavery, from suffering the repercussions of other people's racism. In that vein, and then we also need to continue holding people to police brutality and violence in general. Like, I know that obviously the one of the first priorities is to stop us from to prevent us from being killed in the streets. So that's like, that should be number one. But also, I've in the workplace specifically, like, a lot of what happens in the workplace is like Black American, and just, I'm a woman, so I I'm speaking to being a ADOS woman. We're disparaged a lot more. Like, we're written up more. We're disciplined more in the workplace. Um, we're less we're less likely to be seen as valuable employees within the workplace. So I definitely think we need protections against that as well. And something else that has come up is stealing the ADOS identity. I think um, what women like Rachel Dolezal and CV Vitolo Hadid have done, and what's his name? Mindy Kaling's brother. What he did, those should be those should be crimes, punishable by law. It should be illegal to steal the ADOS identity. So I think those are some policies that we need to put in place. We need to all the other laws that are on the books that have worked systemically to keep ADOS down, that the housing discrimination laws or housing laws that worked to discriminate against ADOS, those need to be erased. Like, sometimes I think, like, we need a new constitution, because that um, the one that we have now wasn't written with all of America in mind. It wasn't written with ADOS in mind. So we need a completely new constitution that and have that encompasses laws that benefit all Americans. So I'm sure I went over 5 minutes as well. So I'm going to stop talking now. Brian, if you want to add anything to what you think an ADOS reparations program could consist of, then we'll move on.
Okay. I have two thoughts. My first is because, well, I think the question was initially framed at the beginning of this part of the discussion as, what do we want? Like, what should our community fight for? And, I have to say that, like, it's not my question to answer from that perspective. Like, it's not for me. So I look at all of this through the lens of justice and equality and fairness, but I don't feel like I'm in a position to say say what the ADOS community should want. Like, I could say what I mean, I have an opinion from my perspective as a human being and a, you know, trained as an attorney and an avid reader and whatnot, but it's hard for me to answer the question in that respect from that lens. So just say that. I also want to note, in Chris's answer, there was, at least at the initially, there was a lot of discussion, ideas basically that fall under the larger heading of self-determination. And to me, I think that really the most important aspect of the concept of reparations, you know, in an abstract, you know, from an abstract point of view, is that the ADOS community has been deprived of the ability to determine their own lives, you know, legally through systemic racism and economically through, you know, debt-based racism, which is, you know, all encompassed in the idea of systemic racism. But so there are many facets to the discussion of what reparations should consist of. But I think most importantly, I think if I don't want to put words in Chris's mouth, but I really think that that's the most important lens through which to look, or posture from which to start the conversation, is like the ADOS community has been deprived of the ability to determine the course of their own lives in myriad ways, and that's the starting point. So that's it. That's all I got.
Okay. Next question I have is what defines ADOS as eligible for reparations?
Everybody just hopping in, or do you have an order that you want to go in?
No, everyone's just been hopping in. I'm sorry, there's no order today. So whoever wants to jump in, go ahead, and I'll start the timer for you once you're ready to.
All right, I'll go first. If you have to be a descendant of a slave. And again, it can be documented through census records who people were enslaved. You know, in the census records, they go back to that period. So basically, you have to be a descendant of a slave. Point. That's just it. Your family did suffer the multi-generational trauma of being a slave. So basically, our ADOS legacy, that's how we're defined. And I'm honored to say that we as a people, we have persevered under tremendous odds. And again, that's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to echo that statement verbatim. That's basically it. I mean, our acronym, you know, our name spells out the answer. You have to be a descendant of slave. I want to jump back a little bit into what that reparations and what consists of. One thing, I mean, and it depends on what you really want, you know what I mean, from reparations. If we really want to really be, you know, a fully part of this country, or do we want our own nation? So, I mean, this depends on that. I think that part of reparations, and if ADOS want to stay here in America, we need 2 Supreme Court judges that are ADOS permanently all the time, that we get to pick, because we can stay over in this country, but as long as we don't have any power on the Supreme Court, they can keep on making laws that oppress us, you know, regardless. And the Supreme Court can vote them up or down. They can strike them down. So if we don't have any voice on the Supreme Court, we can pass all the legislation in the world. And then some conservatives, neocons, will come around, stack up the court, and strike them all down. That's all I got to say.
I also want to make sure that we are able to document that they actually lived a life as ADOS, opposed to identifying with other races. And sometimes people may very well put Black on their applications, but it may be the whole Kamala thing. Recently, we have seen a lot of the identity theft, like Kiara was saying, and we need legislation. That's kind of scary for real, but we are not very good gatekeepers in our communities either. I mean, from my perspective, I worry about the mentally ill, the people that are not able to really function, what reparations is going to look like for them, and how can we ensure that they are not mistreated or abused, because it's a lot, it's overwhelming.
I'll say, I feel like the fact that we're Americans gives us every right to it, just like any other oppressed people in America have already received. Historically, we've seen other ethnicities, other peoples who have been placed in internment camps, wrongfully accused, wrongfully treated, and after that, then receiving some version of reparations that has helped to undergird their community and the people therein. So I don't know. I just kind of feel like, as everyone else is saying, of course, the name is self-explanatory, but to go even further, and I'll keep pressing this issue, and I'm sure I've said it time and time before. This is a debt that's owed. This is an actual debt. This is something that not only and I'll take it as far as to say, even if Lincoln hadn't said 40 acres and a mule, even if he hadn't said that, there was no sort of economic structure that was built to help the slaves do anything once the Emancipation Proclamation took place. They didn't say, okay, well, now you've been working here and all you've known is work. All you've known is to do X, Y, and Z, and now you don't have to go live. Go live and go work, go find jobs, go establish a livelihood and a life for yourselves based on nothing. Here's no education. You can't vote. And if you loiter, we're going to arrest you. I mean, so that's what was in place. Nothing and the penalty of arrest for existing. So just based on that alone, by the mere virtue of that, we should be receiving something in the sense of this is an actual documented mistreatment of a people that have lived and have thrived, well, I won't say thrived, but have existed here within the United States based on United States policies and procedures and even legislation that has been enforced to keep us in a subjugated position. So because of that, and actually, yes, definitely because of that, I had to think about it. Because of that, yeah, that entitles us, in my opinion, to reparations in some form or fashion. Going back to what the gentleman was saying before, yeah, of course we need within ourselves to maintain our self-determination and all that. But we, and with that, we need to make sure that we are not sleep at the gate and not letting people infiltrate and come in and say, okay, this is, oh, well, this person's cool. No, but he's cool. We got to stick to the code. That's how we end up with, I'm a hip hop head. That's how we getting up with people in hip hop, white people in hip hop talking about, I've done more for hip hop than anybody has. and I could get to say the N word as much as I want because of that. Whoa, wait, what? You know, like, what is that? You know, so we need to maintain an actual structure, of course, amongst ourselves, but within that, or to help fortify that, yeah, an economic insurgence of some sort, of injection, definitely needs to take place. Now I'll leave it at that. I'm probably talking too much.
All right, Alvania, do you want to?
Yeah, I have a comment about reparations and Obama. You know, citizens of Hawaii did receive reparations under Obama, if you was not aware of that. And so reparations was paid to Hawaiian citizens during Obama's administration, but to us, quote unquote, they want us to just enforce the anti-discrimination laws. I don't know, and for me, we know about the debt, but for me, the thing that is so ironic is the fact that the United States government will not even address the issue, period. You know, they even apologize. Granny Faye having technical difficulties. I apologize for that. Okay, I'm so sorry.
Are you
Um,
talking about the Samoans?
no, Hawaii received reparations under Obama as well. In Hawaii, they along with other Pacific Islanders, yes. But that reparations was paid to to Hawaiian citizens. That's all I have. Just back on the reparations topic. He kind of threw me. I forgot what I was saying, and I apologize.
And that kind of leads us into our next two questions. Well, I think uh, Obama's people were from Hawaii, so it makes sense that he got them reparations. You know, um, everybody. I mean, quite a few people were shocked when they read about President Trump giving, I think, how much was it? Like 13 billion to Puerto Rico because he needs their votes. So, I mean, that's not exactly what our definition of reparations is, but it is a an address of their issues. It's a monetary address of saying, I understand you have these issues, and I'm going to fund this. I'm going to give you this money so that they can be fixed. So our next two questions, it's kind of like a two-parter. First part is, who will pay reparations? And the second part is, who will ensure policies developed under ADOS reparations are implemented? So who will pay reparations, and who will ensure that ADOS policies are actually implemented? And this kind of, along this question, like think of HR 40, HR 40, we've been talking about that for a long time. Like, who will be in charge? Who will pay it, and who will be in charge of making sure that it actually gets done?
I don't know. I kind of look at, HR 40, while, its intention, I guess, is good. They already did that. They did that in the 80s. There's already been I think it was, I can't remember the number for it, but it was in like the late 80s. They already put forth a subcommittee to research and find out if it's legit and if it should take place and how much it should be. They already did that. This, to me, HR 40 is just another it's just another stall tactic. Hey, all right, we gonna get back to you. We got to go study about it first. Let me go find out. I'll be right there. Let me, to me, that's the way it sounds. That's the way it sounds. So, but when you're talking about who should do it, I think, you know, just like Antoine was saying, like we need to have people in place. If we had actual judges, you know, in place who are going to enforce the laws that are on the books, and we get to select them. That would help to make sure that we get our just due, so to speak. And who should pay it? Well, people who the ones who committed the wrong, the U.S. government. U.S. government. I mean, to me, that's not a. Maybe I'm oversimplifying things, or maybe I'm missing something. But I feel like the goal should be that the U.S. government should be the ones that are paying it, since they're the ones who placed legislation in place that kept us oppressed. They're the ones who instituted black codes. They're the ones who instituted loitering laws. They're the ones who instituted legislation that kept us out, you know, from getting certain jobs, certain moving to certain areas, from living in certain areas, from having certain amounts of housing, from being able to take care of our families, keeping us out of certain schools. I mean, they are the ones who did that. We didn't do that. I'm reminded of this clip, and maybe I can share it with you. I'm not sure, but where it's like in the 60s or something like that. White guy in Oklahoma is talking about. He goes around talking to. He's a preacher. He goes around talking to people in the black community and saying, well, what can be done to help? And he talks to this one barber, and the barber's like, what do you expect us to do? Y'all did this. We didn't put out none of this stuff in place. Yeah, it's up to y'all to fix this. And I hate to be like, we'll hold you accountable because we're sitting here saying, where's ours? You just hooked up all them other people. You gave something to them, and y'all. Where's ours? Like, so yeah, that's in. I don't know. To me, I feel like that's an easy question to answer. Again, maybe I'm oversimplifying it, or maybe I'm missing something. But I feel like, yeah, we didn't put ourselves in this position. We didn't sit here and subjugate ourselves. It didn't happen. So if it's not the government, who else?
Go ahead, Vanya.
Yeah, well, as far as the HR 40 and the S 1083, that's the Senate equivalent, and it's right now Cory Booker is, I guess, sponsoring it. But anyway, like he said, Connors did introduce it. I want to say 89, and for one thing, Dr. Doherty did some edits to the HR 40. That is plausible. And I think one thing I cannot overemphasize the importance of this book. Anything else outside of the scope of what Dr. Doherty did is beyond me. Anything else is recreating the wheel. When Dr. Doherty, that was his life purpose, in my opinion. When he put that book out, it should be no more other discussions on reparations, because that's not only a plan of addressing, of course they addressed it. We got a national apologies, 2008? Of course they acknowledge all the harms done. You know, we still uncovering all the dirt that has been done to us in the form of, lynchings and just the criminality of just everything that the U.S. government has done to us. Again, my main thing is I cannot understand why they will not honor and just pay the reparations. They will admit to it, but I fell down my own rabbit hole, but I'm not gonna hold you up. The work has been done on reparations. Dr. Doherty has done the work. His PhD is from MIT in economics. And for him to also have advanced degrees in Black African-American studies, this is like an academic marriage made in heaven. And what this book has done to the reparations argument, anti-reparation, he has blown everything out the water. He has organized so much information on the scope and topic of reparations. If the Biden administration goes with anybody else, I don't dare count to anybody else for this. It's if they go with anybody else, it's insane. That's how valuable this book is, because all the questions, everything has been answered. The why, he documents the laws that were broken, laws that were made, mass lynchings. The book itself, each chapter is overwhelming, and it's just a source of information. And that's all I have. I don't want to jump down the rabbit hole. Thank you again.
Thank you. All right, Deb, do you want to jump in?
Uh-huh. I wanted to know what are the directives in regards to Trump and the 1776. Yeah, I mean, is there any way I can get some cut and paste responses? Because I already know that it's going to be very unreliable. I know it won't be accurate. And seeing that 1619 is when we actually hit the shores, I don't see how they are going to be able to cut us out, but I can see them cutting us out. For me, I mean, the reason why ADOS is so important for me, I feel like they're doing genocide in our community. And it's so overwhelming that it's even hard to frame all the different facets of our life that it impacts. So I want to know, what are we going to do, or what are the directives for this 1776 project to already have defenses about it?
Well, well, when I see the the creation of a 1776 commission in response to the 1619 project, I thought it was laughable because, I mean, Donald Trump was saying that we need to get to a patriotic education. I'm like, hasn't that always been the American school system's education? It's a very white-centered learning structure. So I don't see what more whiteness could be taught in schools. Um, I did see a post on Twitter. Someone was saying that they mentioned the Irish and how when Irish first migrated to America, they had low wage jobs, and I said and that the commission should um, include study on that. I'm like, yeah, but they should also include studies on how immigrants uh, unionized against um, Black Americans. I mean, we'll hopefully we'll get more into it next week because there is like a chapter on race and racism around this time of the Civil War. So like more on that later. But I think with the 1776 Commission, you can't. The problem that has been with America's education system is it's been whitewashed. You know, you the education is very white pride centered, and it needs to be American pride centered. Which you have to teach about the stories of Black America as well. You can't talk about our like you can't talk about our founding fathers without teaching that they were slave owners. And maybe that should also be a part of our reparations agenda, like a reimagining of what education is. And like you can't teach about whiteness without including Blackness. So that's all I have to say. That Brian, if you wanted to add what you think, oh, what was the question? Who will ensure a reparations policy and who will pay for it?
Sure. I agree with Chris. It's the federal government. I mean, I don't think he was oversimplifying it. I think that's right. I can't imagine who else would pay for it. And who would enforce it? I mean, geez, I don't know. You know, so much of this discussion seems like it's about not just the problems that face the ADOS community, but just how dysfunctional our democracy has been for 200 years. So I don't know. I don't have an answer for it. I don't know who would enforce it. I mean, other than to say we would all enforce it. We would all do our best to enforce it. The people who believe in it, you know, the people that believe that it's right and it's fair. I know that's high-minded and totally abstract and not in any way concrete, but I can't think of anything else to say about it, really.
Okay, I have a comment and then a quick question, which might stir up another debate, but that's fine. So um, I think much like NARC and Cobra are involved with HR 40. I think we need a CBC, a Congressional Black Caucus, that actually, or maybe I don't, maybe we need to go beyond that at this point, because the Congressional Black Caucus really doesn't speak for ADOS. So maybe we need ADOS specific people who would be in charge, and whether I mean, we have a lot of progressive Black Americans, Black ADOS, who were being voted in, and maybe we could create a specific ADOS caucus that would be in charge of implementing and making sure that those laws are followed. Obviously, we are all in agreement that the U.S. government owes reparations, which it does. However, with that, I also look at how wealth was attained in America and all the corporations which benefited from it, which have grown to multi-billion-dollar companies. And sometimes I think that in addition to the federal government covering reparations, like maybe there should be some type of wealth tax or some type of corporate tax to those businesses that did get their start in slavery, um, that were culpable in the in how this country got its rise to the status where it is now. So I guess that's never really seemed to take off as far as like other people adopting that opinion as well. But what do you all think? Should there be a wealth tax for those for corporations involved with slavery? Should there be one? Could there be one? Would that work? How would that work? I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's a great idea. A lot of the pushback that we get, and I don't really care about the pushback because I know it's a debt that we're owed. But a lot of the pushback we get, and I understand it. We got a lot of poor people of all kinds of races here. And to take it to the people that benefited most off of our misery, that makes perfect sense. Because right now, people got the narrative that, it's coming out of their pocket. If taking it to the richest of the rich, the ones that, that's how they attain that wealth, is off of our backs. So, I mean, that's a really good idea, my opinion. I don't know how would that work and, the structure of it, but as far as the idea, it tracks really well because those people were the ones that benefited most off of African slavery to today.
I'll kind of, and if I'm talking too much, y'all let me know. But I'll piggyback off that. I feel like, and yeah, we've kind of touched on this before, but when I think about our um, government system right now, our legal system right now, um, and its frailties, I feel like a lot of those are put in place just so that we can have things to fall through the cracks, and then someone can benefit off those off those falling. Take Ruth Bader Ginsburg just passed away, and we've got a whole justice system that basically was hinging on the health of an 87-year-old lady. If you put that in perspective, it kind of shows the frailty of our system as a whole. And when you say, well, we're going to use that same system to now implement a widespread movement, legislation, or what have you, for a certain group of people, that in itself would almost directly indicate that there's going to be some sort of issue, problem with getting it moving, getting it rolling, and getting it all the way to the finish line. So, I mean, and we've kind of touched on this before. I feel like, we would need to start almost from, I hate to say start from scratch, start from the beginning, but there is the Constitution initially wasn't written with us in mind. Laws, and most of the laws that are on the books were not written in direct understanding or appreciation or acknowledgement of our humanness. And so, so as a result, we're steadily playing catch up. So a lot of those things would need to take place. It's like we have to have so much more than just, a check. We have to have so much more than just, student loan repayment or whatever, or forgiveness, or something like that. We have to have so much more than that. Like, there actually needs to be like almost a line by line audit of our legal system, of our legislation, so that we can say, wait, when you wrote this, who were you talking about? When you wrote this, who did you mean? When you said this, who are you referring to? Because that don't sound like us. We don't do that. Wait, that's benefiting somebody else. That's not equality. That's so those sorts of steps actually need to take place, and we would need to, in my opinion, we would need to have like actual legal representation that will give us that ability to do so. Have a board that's set up for legal issues, to go out and audit these commissions, and I'm sorry, a commission that go out to audit these laws, so that way we can make sure that everything is on the up and up. So that way, going forward, we can say, well, this is the playing field from which we're playing now. This is the ground that we're starting from, and this is how we need to move things up. Am I going too long? All right, and I'm done. I'm good. I'm done. I'm out. All right.
I'll say, did anyone else want to add anything to that?
I wouldn't mind if I can, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so Brian and then Alvonia.
Thanks. Both Antoine and Chris, each one of them said something that I think are really, aside from all the important things that everybody said, they just said there's one point from each of their previous comments that I think are really important. And I'll preface this by saying, like it or not, y'all are about to hear a bit of a diatribe from me about the banking system in this country. I'll start with Chris's comment about having to start from scratch, because every time I think about reparations, and again, I also have to say that I haven't gotten into the nitty gritty of Mr. Doherty's book. So I don't know his his posture or their posture, the co-authors, on that specifically. But I totally agree with Chris's sentiment of like, in some ways we have to start from scratch because the financial system in this country and the monetary system in this country is completely corrupt from top to bottom, left to right. You know, it's an age-old adage that money corrupts, power is money. It affects everyone. As soon as you come into wealth, you feel the forces of corruption. And we're at a point in this country's history, unfortunately, where I do think that it's completely irrevocably broken. So I agree with Chris's sentiment of like, in some ways, it almost feels like you have to start over completely to get it right. And Antoine's point was that, you know, it's not just a racial issue in many ways. It's very much a class issue also. And so I don't know. I mean, it's the specifics of reparations are, I have such a hard time thinking about it without saying like, God, let's say, you know, we were talking about the $500,000 number, Kiara, earlier. I'm like, I think to myself, like, okay, let's say that happened. In this current monetary climate, fiscal climate, debt-based currency climate, like, I feel like in 2 or 3 generations, it would just be meaningless because our system is so dependent upon debt. I mean, our monetary system is based exclusively in debt. Like, we don't actually print cash anymore. So I don't want to go further down into that rabbit hole, but I really liked what Antoine and Chris said. And I really felt compelled to jump on and make that point. So thanks.
Just to piggyback real quickly, and I'll shut up. But yeah, Ryan makes a good point in that I've always felt this way, that, you know, laws are for the poor. Laws are for the poor, but, you know, and everyone with money, they get to live however they want. But you know, when you're poor or when you're below middle class or below, that's when we get to enforce the laws that are on the books. But anybody else, you know, they get a pass. It's an asterisk by that. But that's all I can say.
I would say, I mean, thinking along those lines, I mean, obviously we're seeing firsthand just how fragile the economy was. Like everybody, I want to say everybody, because like, you know, there's, you know, obviously there's people out there living debt free, but the majority of us, not just ADOS, but the majority is like, we have debt. America is a debt centered country. So, but what ADOS is saying is like, just like whites have the opportunity to grow in wealth, we should have had those opportunities to grow in wealth. So we are owed that seed money. We are owed the chance to be able to invest and to have that money grow. So it's not like we're going to, I mean, obviously, aside from paying off the debts we have, we're not, unless you're Nicole Hannah Jones, you won't be spending that money. You're going to use it to increase for your children, for your grandchildren. So I wouldn't necessarily say like, oh, it would be useless. Not for not for the smart ADOS who aren't gonna blow it all on Gucci. I'll say that much. But let's move on. We have about 20 minutes left. Let's move on. Um, these next few questions have to do with immigration or immigrants, minorities, and indigenous Native Americans. And the question is, why should there be an ADOS, specific reparations, when we're not the only group in America that has been discriminated against? I mean, obviously, indigenous people are like, they're still to this day not like, they're still being plundered. I know there are plenty of reservations that are uh, third world, and the same with other minorities. So with that in mind, people ask the question, should we have a low income based reparation? Should we have a minority based reparations? And Alvania, you can go first.
Yeah, well, first off, immigration. I want to say that white supremacy has weaponized immigration. And secondly, going back to our legacy of slavery and segregation and the continuation of systemic racism in just about every everyday activity. I guess what people fail to realize, our ADOS story is continuously being told. Every day we experience multiple incidents of systemic racism. I guess, again, as far as my stance on immigration, until 1968, you didn't have that many people of color, BIPOC. It was proven that Kay Harris's people were heard, but they were students, of course. But going back to who's immigrating, we've been able to see who the countries are not sending laborers. The countries are sending doctors. The countries are sending in people that is further setting ADOS in the caste system. I think what drew me to ADOS was the fact, you have to realize, I did very well being indoctrinated by the schools here. Under white supremacy, I did very well, meaning the way I was educated. Because for me and ADOS, that question of how a capitalism and a caste system cannot coexist. And that was what that's what I explained to Deb. I said, girl, capitalism and a caste system can't coexist. And then once ADOS broke it down that we were basically, slavery was the blueprint for capitalism, everything clicked. And again, I don't have a problem with immigration per se, but I have a problem with what this society does with the immigrant and how it relates to us being ADOS. Until they pay their debt to ADOS, I don't think that they should allow certain other programs to proceed until they pay the debt. So I know it's a kind of wishy-washy response, but I'm trying not to be come off as an anti-immigrant. So that's all I have.
I'll jump in real quick. Um, I would say a lot of us are seen as anti-immigrant, but I would say specifically, um, I am not anti-asylum seeker. I am a person who genuinely believes that the United States should be a country that is accepting to those who need to seek refuge here. I also believe that the United States should first and foremost be a place of refuge for its American citizens. So with that said, I think a lot of what's happening with elite immigration is that the US government has usurped its responsibility to its US citizens as far as education, as far as job creation. And it's saying we're not going to invest in public schools. We're not going to make sure our education system can rival those of China and I don't know anywhere else, um, India, since the elite in Africa, and that enables other nations to have the best of their best come here and kind of jump over the rest of us to take over. I can't think of any other, you know, fancier, more succinct way to say that. But I worry now because what's happening. I forgot the exact name of the act, but it's one that Kamala Harris has championed, and it's going to give immigrants from China and India a leg up into coming into our workforce over the American college students who will be graduating if it passes. There are already not enough jobs. Why is America taking them from the people who are actually working? Like they're doing what they're supposed to. They're mm, yeah, it is. Oh yeah, it has to do with the HB or whatever the H1 visas, but it's a specific, like, it has a title. It's like Indian high class something. I can't remember the name of it now. But what it's doing is it's robbing opportunities from the people who are doing the work. They're doing what they said they were supposed to do. They're getting the education, they're doing the work, they're getting the degrees, and they're coming to no jobs because they're being given away. You look at Silicon Valley, and it's primarily immigrants, and I kind of wonder, so America couldn't why didn't America invest in its own citizens to make sure that we were able to fill those jobs? So that's what I think of immigration. I definitely think America should be a country of refuge, but it should be a refuge for us first. And I'll stop talking. Anyone else wants to jump in as far as immigration and minorities and indigenous versus ADOS? Feel free.
Yeah, I touched on it a little bit. My personal opinion is that us mainland ADOS, we try to differentiate ourselves between the numerous island ADOS there are. And I understand about, how, all right, we're in America and we're dealing with, what America has thrown at us. But all ADOS are oppressed. Even in Latin countries, they're oppressed by their white, Latino, Hispanic, however man, race exists. Even in India, light-skinned Indians or light-skinned Indians oppress the dark-skinned Indians that originated from Africa. Everywhere you go, you have dark-skinned people being, even in China, you got the Uyghurs, which you can trace their heritage from Africa, really, all nationalities you can. But I'm getting off into a rabbit hole, but man, specifically this islanders, I don't like us trying to differentiate ourselves between the island ADOS, because we suffer the same plights, even to today. And we talk about the systematic racism and the Jim Crow and, all the legislation that they